Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan and it's back. It's back. I'm back even with another video for you. And today we are going to be taking a look at the Asus Strix GeForce GTX 960. Now, for those of you out there that have been wondering, ooh, where's the reference cards and stuff? Nvidia either haven't sampled or there aren't going to be reference cards about. So they've not sent reference cards out to anyone, although you may see variants that look very Nvidia out there, just because it's kind of the same design sort of coolers and people are making them. There will be, I have seen ones that look like 760s, for example, out there, but there isn't anything kind of like official that's come from Nvidia this time. Unlike like before when we've seen the 980 with the block that the cooler that was on the 780 Ti, for example. That type of thing hasn't happened this time. Now, pricing, because a lot of people always like to know about prices. They're going to be coming in GBP, and they're the prices that I've been given thus far, because obviously I am from Great Britain. Prices from £169 up to around £189, depending on your manufacturer and the stuff that gets bundled and all that kind of stuff. You may see some reference looking cards from specific brands coming in a little bit under that, but the RSPs, or what is it? Yeah, I can never remember that. But basically the prices that the vendors suggest go out are going to be around those sort of numbers. So it's quite a competitive price. It's well under the £200 mark. It's obviously quite a good thing that it's well under the £200 mark, considering some of the pricing that we can be getting on 970s at the moment. But also getting down in that very competitive area of the market also opens it up to some of the slightly older cards from different brands. And to be honest with you, I even had an email from said other big brand, slightly red-faced email, red-faced, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, pointing out about their cards that were a couple of years old that still might be able to compete in this segment of the market, because the prices have been slashed so much and they're obviously trying to get rid of them. But we'll leave that there, and we're going to concentrate on the green team stuff. Now, because I am going to try and rattle this video out a little bit quicker than I normally would, I've got some notes down here. I've also got some of the graphs that I'll ping up on the screens and stuff like that. But the card itself is actually very pretty. And I'm just looking around. I think I've boxed it up already, but it's exactly the same size as the GTX 750 Ti. Now, it's not the same PCB, it's just the same sort of size, apart from the heatsink does come out of the end of the card a little bit. It does have a single 6-pin power on it. The original 750 Ti did, then they realised that it didn't need it, and when they did the Strix one, it was missing, but it's all kind of, you know, nice. But most important thing, even though this, I think, is going to be coming in around this sort of like 179 to 189 price bracket, depending on how much the retailer wants to remove your kidneys to let you have one. It does come with a backplate, which does tidy it up infinitely, which I actually kind of really like. Another thing to differentiate it from the 750 Ti is the 750 Ti had a solid aluminium block, where it was just a chunk of aluminium with the fans on the top. This has actually got the separate fins and some lovely sexy heat pipes, and it's all actually rather nice. It can be dwarfed in a rig, but the small compact nature of it means that if you're running slightly low on space, an MITX rig, an M80X rig, something like that, it's going to look, it's not going to look out of place. But also, let's face it, nowadays, we don't necessarily always need a hunking great chunk of silicon in our rig for it actually to work properly. Now, sometimes when they shrink stuff, temperatures go up. Maximum temperature I got out of this was 61 degrees. If you overclock it, and by overclock it, I mean do it this stupid way, it pretty much, you know, it still copes. We were looking at around the 64 degrees mark. Actually to overclock, because I've used a few of these, and I don't want to mention brands compared to, you know, to kind of mix it all up, but compared to the other ones, this one absolutely loved volts. Some of the others, when you touched the volts, it kind of all went a bit wibble, and it didn't really like doing anything, and you pretty much had to leave it at stock. This absolutely, or at least the one I've got in my hands, this specific one, was absolutely flourished when you give it a little bit of a tickle on the old testicles with a little bit more volts. I ended up managing to get this over 1500 megahertz out of the box, with the extra boost. Now you're going to be saying to me, so what's the clocks out of the box? These things are rocking 1300 megahertz out of the box with a boost over the 1400 mark. Then once you start playing around with the boosts and all that kind of thing, you can easily start seeing 1500 megahertz with like I said, by tickling the volts and everything as well. Only 2 gigabytes of memory, but one of the things I do stress, because everyone's now going to be throwing stuff at the screen, all the AMD fanboys are going to be going, whoa, we can have some fun with our keyboards for this one. Calm your fucking jets, boys. It's basically, this is being heavily, and I do mean heavily, marketed at the 1928, see, I need to go back to school. The 1080 crew. It's being heavily marketed at those, and basically Nvidia have done a lot of research, and you'd be amazed how many people are still rocking 760s, not playing at HD resolutions and all that kind of stuff, and this is meant to be the upgrade, and they're going to be marketing this at all those people playing on older cards, and maybe on lower resolutions and stuff, and saying this is the card that you need to get. So it may not be you, but it doesn't mean you don't need to necessarily buy it, because it is a cracking little card. So they've got all these things that, you know, they're shouting at people. You don't necessarily need to worry about like 12 gigabytes of VRAM because you're going to go and play Battlefield 3 at like 1080. Do you know what I mean? Or the, you know, going down through, you know, 1680 and all that kind of stuff, and going down through the resolutions. Because let's face it, I've never seen a rig playing Battlefield even hit 2 gigabyte unless you're going to start playing it on like 4K and all that kind of like huge multiple screens. It's just not needed. So for those of you out there that, you know, have got a sensible budget, you've got a wife that will quite literally chop your balls off, you've got parents and you don't want to just flipping go and rape the bank of mum and dad, and you've got to keep things sensible, sometimes these are the options for those of you. But the thing is, if you're going to be looking at one of these cards, you're not going to be looking to bolt it to a 4K screen or a 1440 screen anyway. Now, while we're talking about results and all that kind of stuff, one of the things I will say is click the link and go and have a look at all the stuff on the Overclock 3D website, because I did base most of my testing on 1080, but then because I'm an idiot, I also bunged a load of tests through for the 1440 as well. We've done power results, done thermal results, we've done all kinds of fucking stuff. So hopefully we will have ticked all your boxes. There are multiple cards in there as well, so you're also going to be getting the ones from AMD that they were shouting about, because they're just in our graphs anyway. But one of the most important things is you're going to get some of the 760s in there, because we've obviously done 760s in the past. We've got 750 Ti's in there. We've got 770s in there. So if you're a green fanboy, you're going to be able to see the mixture between the three. And I'm talking so bloody quickly, and I've even given up coffee. Right, so the stuff that the 960 as a whole comes with, there's a few little bits and bobs that if I don't say stuff about it, people at Nvidia are going to be sending me emails going, oh, you weren't very well educated, did you not attend our WebEx? Well, sadly, yes I did. So I have my notes and I know the stuff that I need to say, and I could try and do it without that, but I'd have to get all calm and, you know, chill out, and basically I've had a lot of Haribo, so we're going to crack on with it. They do this thing called multi-frame anti-aliasing, which is MFAA. And essentially what that is it's anti-aliasing without the balls crippling performance loss. Because if you go onto A8 and smash it up to 8 times, your frames per second is going to drop quicker than your cock in a cold wind. So with the MFAA, it kind of rounds the edges off a little bit without raping the performance. So you've got the MFAA option there if you're running a rather stressful game, because it doesn't matter what kind of resolutions that you're running. If you're playing something like, let's say, Last Light, Metro Last Light, that thing is an absolute bollock crusher no matter what resolution you put it on. But if you turn the AA up, Jesus Christ, even 980 struggle with that. So if you were to stick it at a sensible resolution, play around with some of your settings, and then turn the MFAA on rather than 8 times AA normal, you'll get a much better performance, but you'll still get some of the nice curvy edges rather than Minecraft. The other one that they've got is DSR. Now this has been available for ages, and you know, for argument's sake, for those people that they're aiming it at, like 660s, the DSR, which is Dynamic Super Resolution, is available on that. But the 660's not really got the kahunas to drive it home enough at a decent playable frame rate. Well, essentially what DSR is the card, or it will render it in a huge resolution like 4K, but then display it on your 1080p monitor. So it looks much nicer and cleaner. It's obviously not 4, you've not magically got 4 HD screens squeezed into your normal 1080p one. So you're not getting 4K resolution proper, but you're getting a lot of the details and stuff. It kind of over renders it. When it does that, you do need to be thinking about the type of game that you're playing as well. That throughout the kind of like the WebEx and stuff, they're on about like League of Legends and all this MOPA stuff that I really don't understand, because I'm not that type of gamer. Give me a car game and I'm fucking off and I'll talk to you about it all night. But that type of stuff, anyway, I do know that they're not the most stressful of games in the world. And they were even saying in a 1080p mode, the card would run passive and the fan wouldn't even spin up with that. So it's obviously not going to be raping the back end off of it. So with those games, it's acceptable. Do you know what I mean? You'll be able to run it. It's not going to kill your performance by doing it, and it will be able to cope. But you start chucking in games like Crysis 3 and Last Light and stuff like that, it may not be able to cope with it to an acceptable frame rate. So it's one of those type of ones that you're going to have to play with it depending on your game. You may have to go into GeForce Experience and have a little bit of a fiddle. But let's face it, boys and girls, we all like a bit of a fiddle, don't we? Anyway, so moving on, other things that it's got is it's built for DirectX 12. I've literally been sat here because I'm filming this the day before the NDA, because I've been waiting for prices and they do take the piss leaving it till the last minute. But it's built for DirectX 12. So Windows 10, that's coming. All the new mumbo jumbo games, and there are a lot of games that are going to be supporting DirectX 12 out of the box, or soon, all that kind of shit. You're going to need to get a 900 series card for DX12. The 700s, even the 780 Ti's, are not going to support it. So if you're trying to get DX12 on a budget, then so far this is your best option. Then it's also got G-Sync, but let's face it, at the moment, if you're buying a card like this, you're not going to be buying a G-Sync monitor until those prices plummet, because they're still eye-wateringly expensive. Yes, some of them are nice, and we are starting to get IPS ones coming through now, but for the average person that's going to be buying a, let's say, £170 card, you're not going to be hanging it off of a £500 monitor, are you? Right, so moving on, there's also TXAA, PhysX. They work really hard on drivers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we know all that kind of stuff. Power. Power is a big one, because when the 980 was released, it was kind of a bit of a sidestep away from the 780 Ti. It was marginally better in some of the titles. It had a bit more VRAM. It was like, people were like, it's not that much of a big step from the last time before, but the power usage just fucking plummeted from the 780 Ti. It used so much less power and still managed to provide, you know, as good and sometimes even better performance. Well, this, in respect of 960 versus 760, is pretty much the same. But this is where it gets complicated, because when a card previous uses less power, then you try and cut this down, they all kind of, the drop is kind of a percentage difference, roughly the sort of same. But when the one before, you know what I mean, like the 760 wasn't exactly power hungry, you know, the percentage, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, so it doesn't sound as dramatic. But the one way that I can kind of make you kind of go, well, actually, that must be good, was we shouted and raved when the 750 Ti come out. The Maxwell use on that, I think we were getting, if I find me graph, and I'll bring it up on your screen. So on the graph there, you can see right at the very bottom, I do mean, We've got, yes, we have the 750 Ti at the bottom, but that was the Nvidia 750 Ti, and it was the most basic card in the world. It practically looked like the cooler on it was one of the original Intel fan cooler things. But if you have a look, we've got the Asus GTX960 Strix, 243 watts. Now, our HD 550 that was at the bottom, that was quite literally a passive, very basic system, very basic graphics card. And our system here is a 2011, it's a 4960X, 4.4 gigahertz, 16 gig of RAM, monster rig, really. So we kind of call that 212 watts as our kind of baseline. So when you look at this, loaded up with Unigine, burned for 30 minutes, 1440 resolution, 8 times anti-aliasing, it was only pulling 243 watts from the wall. And if you then go up, and this is the most surprising thing, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 above, you can see the Asus GTX 750 Ti. So we did the Asus 750 Ti with a little power switch and the basic cooler. It's the thing that I've been talking to you about throughout the review. That was pulling 256 watts from the wall. So you can actually see that the 960 Strix is pulling less than the 750 Ti generation that came before, which when you put it in those kind of respects, you're getting a lot more performance again, but for a lot less power. While we've got graphs up, we can show you Firestrike. Now with Firestrike, what we can do is, if you can see the Asus GTX960, there's a lot of results there. Now we do Firestrike, Firestrike Extreme, and then we do Cloudgate in this, and you can see that we've got 3,537 for the Strix overclock. You go a little bit further down, you've got the normal 960 Strix, which is 3,484. Well, you know, when we kind of put this into perspective, you've got the 280 there, which is below at 3,300. That's well above things like the 760, 750 Ti Boost, SLI. It's even above, when you look at it, 2 HD 7970s. It's above a 7970. I do apologise. So it's above a 280, it's above a 7970. I mean, the 7970 in itself is a big thing. One of the also things that we can see with this little card is that the 3537, with a huge overclock on it, it is knocking on the doors of the performance of the GTX 770. Now, I know there's going to be people out there that are going to be asking about games and all that kind of stuff. So what we've done is we've got you the graph here, but don't forget you can click the link and go to the Overclock 3D website. If you go to the Overclock 3D website, you can see all the games, all the comparisons, all the graphs, all that kind of stuff, our written bit, and you can also find this video again as well. But anyway, you can see in this graph, and the reason why we've chosen Far Cry is we've got quite a range of results. So there's a good amount of stuff that we can talk about, really. And then, so when you go quite near the top, what you can find there, and we have, trimmed out some of the, massive ones above this, and by that I mean we've got the 780 Tis above and the 980s. It doesn't need to be in this graph, but what we can find is if you come a few down, just below the Titan, yes, the GTX Titan, that was like 900 quid when it was launched, you can see the 960 Strix. They were putting out the same sort of frames a second. It's like it's 3 frames a second away on the 1440, and it's 0.6 of frames a second away on the 1080p than a Titan. I mean, that in itself is nuts. When you go slightly further up, you can see it's comparable with, or it's within spitting distance of like a 780. But if you go a little bit further down, you can see that it's above a R9 280. And strangely for this one, it's actually, with this game specifically, the game didn't particularly like the overclocks very much. But in this result, in this graph, you can also see It's faster than a 770 was at launch in this game, because obviously we can't retest everything. So there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about. Right, so moving on to the conclusion, and we're going to be awarding the Asus GTX 960 Strix, the Overclock 3D Gold Award. We're hoping that it's going to come in around the £179 mark. For those of you that, for argument's sake, you know, maybe got a 760, you know, kind of around that kind of ballpark, maybe looking at this as an upgrade option. It's kind of the normal story with cards like with upgrades. You kind of, if you buy a 760, you don't get the next one, you get the one after that. You don't have to upgrade to the same, you know, kind of equal one each time, because you're not really going to get anywhere. With this, what they've done is it's kind of, they've got the same sort of performance, but it's refined. They've got a lot more features going on in there. There's obviously the DX12, it's using a lot less power. We're kind of hoping that like the next generation might be like an enormous leap forward once they kind of, you know, get all the edges polished off and stuff. But the low power that these things are using is crazy. In overclock settings, we were getting like, when really pushed, we were really struggling to get the rig to pull more than 260 odd watts. Something that I did notice is quite strangely, the when you just move the voltage up to overclock these, it doesn't actually use any more power. Normally with a normal another card, if you move that voltage up a bit, it will draw more watts from the wall. This one, the only way you can get it to draw more watts from the wall is actually adding, you have like a power usage slider, and it's always at 100, and sometimes you can push it up. That was the only way I managed to get this to use any more than it would have done at stock. So effectively, because I don't normally use that power performance slider, I normally find it causes more problems than solves them. But when I was forcing this to do it, like I said, I managed to get more, managed to get to use more power. The thing was, with the overclock, you didn't really kind of need to do it, because it was overclocking ridiculously well. As I said, that 1500 megahertz plus was done without bothering with that performance slider. Temps were all in check, and it all did really well. Obviously with this, with the Asus one, I actually think the size is quite cute. Some of the other cards are a bit bigger. I actually quite like this. I'm not 100% keen on the plastic shroud, but the problem is all of the other ones that I've seen are plastic anyway, so it's not something that you can kind of go, oh, I'm going to go and buy that brand because it's metal. I haven't seen any metal ones come through yet, so it doesn't really matter. But even though it's small and it's one of the, you know, it's in the, I want to say budget aimed range, and I don't mean budget as in you, it's cut down, but I mean budget as in for those of you out there that haven't just got immense amount of money, it still comes with a very tidy, kind of understated, very clean and slim backplate, and that for me is a winner. Because so often now we get the ugly kind of back, and it's really good now to see the manufacturers coming through with a backplate at standard. Let's also kind of chuck into the mix that if you were water cooling, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but if you were water cooling and wanted to buy a backplate, you normally end up paying like 25 or 30 quid for a backplate, and it'll have all the, you know, cutouts and all that kind of shit on it, and then you just bolt your water block through. Well, this comes with it already. So look, you could kind of say that it's OEM, so maybe, you know, people might try and charge you 15 or 20 quid for that. When you kind of add that into the price, it doesn't sound like such a bad deal. I know it's only a little bit of metal, but if you've ever water cooled or know someone that's water cooled, you'll know what I'll be talking about. For argument's sake, the 780 Ti backplates normally start at 30 quid and kind of go up from that point. So the fact it's got one is really nice. You've obviously got all the different connectors on it. It supports up to 4 screens out of the box. It's semi-passive, so it is piss quiet, even though it's really cool as well. I haven't really got anything bad to say about it. There's some tangents that you can take. Obviously, the other brands have been trying to stir the shit and stuff as well, but I think that plays testament to the fact that they're just properly worried about this, that they're having to try and put these little things in the reviewers' heads. But it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's completely up to you. One thing I will say, and you probably already know what I'm talking about, is that they were trying to say very much about, you know, stir the shit and stuff. I think I would personally go with new technology than old technology, because there's going to be games coming through thick and fast now. You know, we're already seeing, you know, the engines are coming out supporting DirectX 12, and you know, this game's going to be coming out with DirectX 12. And if you want all that stuff, which, you know, it's kind of got to the point now where the DirectX 12 is going to unlock the extra CPU at, you know, at a really kind of hardware level. And you know the stuff I'm talking about, you know the words I'm trying not to say because it's all different code branding stuff, but DirectX 12 is going to strip all that stuff away from like BF4 and stuff like that, and it's going to bring it all in, and you're not going to be able to get those benefits of really being able to tap into your CPU for all the cores and the hyper threads and all that type of stuff unless you've got the cards that support it. So yeah, the other card you may want to put on your mantelpiece, because you're going to need something new like this to be able to, there, see, I got my head around it eventually. But anyway, so it's all good. The Asus one, cracking little card. I know I've rabbled on a little bit and I've done things a little bit more differently, but I thought it might have been slightly more entertaining. Also, I probably should have filmed this tomorrow, but I really needed to get to bed, so I wanted to crack it all out and get it done. So the Asus 960 Gold Award, going to be coming in at around 179 quid. Cracking little card, overclocks like a complete nut job, loves the volts, temperatures are great, runs semi-passive, nice and small, not going to rate your electric bill, so the polar bears are going to be able to keep their ice packs for a tiny little bit longer, but as soon as you go and start driving your Ferrari or something, that's all going to go out the window anyway, and we all know what's more important. But anyway, no, I haven't got a Ferrari before you start thinking about it. I've got a push bike. But anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another rather bonkers video for you out. Ding!